I'm a PhD student at Simon Fraser University, and I'm working on how delays scale with animal size and how it affects response time. So animals use feedback control to execute precise movements and to recover from unexpected perturbations. But these feedback control is affected by delays in the nervous system, which is due to inherent limitations such as conduction velocity or the muscle actuation force. And depending on the magnitude of these delays, these can hinder effective feedback control and increase response time, or if they grow too large, they destabilize the system. And many of these delays also depend on animal size. So this could mean that small and large animals need very different control strategies to move. So I'm interested in how response time scales with animal size in the presence of these delays, how open loop and closed loop response times compare to each other, and whether large and small animals need completely different control strategies to move. So the Locomotion Lab has been quantifying delays in the nervous system in the neural control of movement, and recently Max and Heather published the paper of the delays within the monosynaptic stretch reflex. And the monosynaptic stretch reflex is the fastest neurally mediated response because there's just one synapse that has to go through. Now, after the perturbation is sensed and the signal goes through the monosynaptic stretch reflex and reaches the muscles, the animal still needs to move its body and reconfigure it to respond to a perturbation, and we call this inertial delays. And I have quantified inertial delays using two simple computational models. One of this is called the swing task, where I use a distributed mass pendulum and make it move from an initial angle to a final angle to represent swing leg repositioning. And I use an inverted pendulum to represent whole body posture control after a perturbation, and this is called the posture task. In both these cases, I parameterized the mass, inertia, and muscle properties using values from the literature, which was measured from actual animals. And they were measured from actual animals. And now, like, since we have data for all the delays in the system and have the muscle and inertial properties required to characterize the control, I've decided to make simple feedback and feed-forward models to test how response time varies with size in the presence of these delays. So here the motor delays represent all the delays between the spinal cord and the muscle, and the sensory delays represent all the delays between the muscle spindle and the spinal cord. I'm using a PD controller, and I'm tuning the PD controller gains such that I get the minimum response time possible. So if the gains are increased from those optimal values, you get unstable behavior, so response time increases. And if the gains are reduced, the muscles are not activated as strongly, so again, response time increases. And in the feed-forward system, I'm just stacking the sensorimotor delays and the inertial delays, and I'm activating this using maximal muscle torque possible by the muscles of an animal of a certain size. And again, I use optimization to find when to switch the direction of the torque to get minimum response time. So in both these cases, I'm using very simple models. I'm not considering gravity, and it's torque actuated. I'm not considering hill type muscle models. So coming to the results, these optimal gains which minimized response time depended on animal size, and it increased linearly with animal size. So the allometric equations which are used in scaling studies are of the form A into m raised to b. So the coefficient, say for the closed loop here in the red line, the coefficient is 440. That's the value for a 1 kg animal. So a 1 kg rabbit has 440 milliseconds of closed loop response time. And the exponent is 0.21, which means that's the effect of size. So to get the value for, say, a 5-ton elephant, you put in 5,000 for the mass, and you'll get 2.5 seconds. So closed loop response time was way longer than open loop response time, closed loop in red and open loop in blue, for all animal sizes. For a small animal like a shrew, closed loop response time is 4 times longer than open loop response time. And for a large animal, it is, sorry, for a small animal, it's 8 times longer, and for a large animal, it's 4 times longer. And the results were similar for the posture task too. So to conclude, response time under closed loop control scaled with mass to the power 0.21. Response times under closed loop control were much longer than open loop control for all animal sizes. And I noticed that under closed loop control, the muscles were not being fully actuated, because if you have high gains in the PD controller, the system becomes unstable. So these results show that PD control would be a bad choice for neural control of movement for all animal sizes. It's not just a problem for large animals. And this would mean that all animals require compensatory mechanisms which take care of delays for effective motor control, especially when they're moving at high speeds or they have to make large corrections in their movement. And I'd like to thank my committee members and my friends at the Locomotion Lab. Thank you.
So yeah, that is clearly very important work.
I knew you'd say that.
Questions for Sad?
To get the assumption that all animals are minimizing their reaction time, which is implicit here, how does that affect your result? You're assuming that the animal is choosing the right game, etc., to get the best response.
Yes, that I was looking at just this response time feature. Like stability would also have to be considered. Like if I perturb the system and other gains are more stable than this, like animals would have to optimize both response time and stability. And I would see maybe adding muscles to the system would show that maybe muscles can take care of some of those problems.
Thanks.
Hi, Harrison Bartlett. Have you considered, are there morphological differences in animals, like maybe like a greyhound, which is really skinny, versus a bulldog, which has really a wide base of support in this analysis?
Like I can build more complex models, but in these scaling studies, we make the model as simple as possible and then check what happens as you go through size. So I wouldn't be able to predict what a single animal does. For example, a giraffe and a hippo are both 1 ton. But like giraffe's features are completely different from the hippo. But by looking at the simple models, we might be able to see trends with animal size, which we won't see if we looked at a single animal.
Would you expect this to scale with development? So like, is a baby elephant does that still work on your simple model?
That's a good question. There's ontogenetic studies about how these growth from a small animal to a big animal affect this. I haven't looked into it, but that'll be.
The increase in closed-loop time as a function of mass, is that growing faster or slower than, let's say, stance time during gait as that changes with mass? So I guess I'm trying to...
Yeah, so available movement time, like we looked at maximum sprint speed, and that scales with 0.13. So closed-loop response times were double those values for, at least double for all animal sizes.
There's a hand up over there somewhere. Yeah.
I'm just curious, it seems like the delays, I know there's more going on, I mean, I wanted you to explain, but the delays scaling around 0.2, and most animals, most groups of animals, the leg length scale is between 0.3 and 0.4. So is there a diameter effect, or what is the, why is this not scaling closer to leg length scaling?
I looked at the factors which contribute to response time, and so in the numerator there's the moment of inertia of the animal, and leg length contributes to that, and in the denominator is how much torque they can generate, so there's muscle cross-sectional area, moment arms and stuff, so it's an interplay between many different factors, and leg length is one of them, but again the mass or the moment of inertia increases response time, bigger moment arms decrease response time, muscle cross-sectional area decreases response time.
Okay, let's, can we switch over the computers while Syed answers one more question up here? Peter?
So at risk of starting a fight in the room, you found evidence that a small animal can only update their control in closed-loop fashion at about 2 hertz, 440 millisecond delay, right? All of our robot friends in the room use kilos of hertz to update their controls. If you were going to name one thing that could be learned from the animals and applied to robots that would let them behave in such a sloppy controller fashion, what would it be?
Muscles.
Muscles, yeah.
Evolution.
Internal models.
Internal models would be, like a good internal model would take care of all these problems in a robot.
So predictability on the scale of half a second?
It would change with animal size, but I think that
So I think that was a great question. So your point, you yell out muscles because you were saying something preflexive like, is that the idea?
Well, it could be more than that. I mean, preflex, but also interesting damping properties and stuff.
But that you wouldn't,
That are activation dependent.
it's like a zero latency mechanical response to disturbance. That was one possibility. Andy yelled out internal models, meaning some predictive ability that allows you to do it, you know, to look ahead essentially. Okay, any other one? Anybody else want to join that fight?
I have a
Art?
question.
Well, hold on, Art's fighting still.
Why assume that it's the roboticists who need to learn something? Maybe animals need to learn to have
I should have known it'd be a smart-ass comment. And that should have been my internal model. I have a good internal model of Art. But, Andy.
Just a related power term in there, which you didn't talk about, is sensor accuracy. So if you're doing the postural task, where it's a feedback task, you can do it with arbitrary large delays if you have a perfect model and perfect sensors. But the bigger the delays, the more sensor model accuracy you need. Is that does that figure in somehow in your way of thinking, or no? So they're about, you know, in principle you could look ahead, you know, 30 characteristic times, but you can't, because you need e to the minus 30 accuracy in your sensors.
Could I, in the spirit of the way this meeting works, I want to volunteer somebody to answer that question. So is Tom Libby here? This might be hard to volunteer if he's not actually here. Tom, you here? Okay. Tom Libby thinks about this question a lot, and the answer, I help him think about it, and the so I'm going to put some words in his mouth. But you know, one of the things that Tom's been interested in doing is comparing animals to robots in terms of things like the resolution you get from sensors and the delays and so on. It's a really tough comparison to make because animals have very long delays, but an incredible number of sensors compared to robots. But the sensors also give information at a pretty low bit rate compared to what you get in a robot. And so he's been trying to figure out, well, what's the fairest way to make that comparison? And maybe I think he's going to speak here. Maybe he can say a few words about it. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Syed, thank you very much.